In this video, I want to tell you about a serious East Germantown flash flood that occurred on September 8th, 2011, and East Mt Airy's stormwater runoff role in that tragic event, which resulted in the drowning of a 27-year-old woman in her automobile caught in the floodwaters. So we can see the WHYY Newsworks article a few days after the event, and on the map we see that the flooding occurred at Belfield Avenue and East Haines Street, just south of East Mt Airy. To help in our bearings, I'm going to review a little of the geography. In red we see the city limits, and then in the white we see the East Mt Airy area. Now I've added the two watersheds that are involved in Mt Airy. The Wissahickon watershed, which is well known to many people. It primarily drains the western Mt Airy, that is the area west of Germantown Avenue. And then on the east of Germantown Avenue we have the Tacony-Frankford, that's TTF watershed. Not that many people know about the TTF watershed because we don't have any visible stream in the East Mt Airy area to sort of see on a day-to-day basis, so that the streams tend to be more hidden on the eastern side of the city, as we'll find out in a second. Now this is a historic map from 1843 which shows you the East Mt Airy and West Mt Airy Avenue. Here's Germantown Avenue, and we can see Rittenhouse Lane, which is now been renamed Gowan Avenue. Here's Allen's Lane, here's Gorgas Lane, Washington Lane, and of course Germantown is the divide between West Mt Airy and East Mt Airy. Now we can see in West Mt Airy side the Wissahickon Creek. What about this creek on the eastern side? Well, this is actually the historic route of the Wingahocken Creek, and you can see it was visible in East Mt Airy, and here leaving East Mt Airy at Washington Lane. So the question is, what happened to the Wingahocken Creek? Well, this is a very interesting series of maps prepared by the Philadelphia Water Department that show the historic streams in Philadelphia as well as the more modern remaining streams. You can obtain a copy of this at the phillyh2o.org blog, which is an excellent reference site. So here we see the Wingahocken Creek, and it traveled through East Mt Airy and East Germantown and met up with the Tacony. Now we see that it's not on the current map, as we also see several other creeks have been removed from the map. Now, what happened to those creeks? In order to understand that, we need to go a little bit into the sewerage history in the city. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was very serious public health problems, outbreaks of yellow fever and other diseases which were associated with very serious and chronic water pollution. At the time, Philadelphia residents had privies, and many times there was raw sewage in the local streams. In order to solve the problem, the city undertook one of the largest public works projects in the world at the time, building a series of combined sewers which encapsulated both the stream and the polluted the water pollution and ultimately stormwater that would pass through these streams during rain events, put them into combined sewers, covered them, and then in many areas built streets above the combined sewer, and houses were and residences were built very close to these combined sewers. So this is what happened to the Wingahocken. It was converted from a open natural stream to a covered combined sewer. You can see in red, this was the stream alignment, and then you see in yellow on approximate locations of the combined sewers that took over the role of both the natural drainage as well as the sewerage drainage. Now this is a blow up that shows you in East Mt Airy the location of the original Wingahocken Creek and then the replacement combined sewer. And what I've shown you here is Gowan and Ardley, which is one of the headwaters area for the Wingahocken Creek, and then the flood area at Belfield and East Haines on September the 8th, 2011, only 1.7 miles downstream of Gowan. So what's important to realize is that the East Germantown flood area is downstream of East Mt Airy, and that East Mt Airy's stormwater contributed to the flooding of East Germantown. Now let's look at the factors that were contributed to this horrible drowning and flood on September 8th. First, we have to look at rainfall, because both stormwater and domestic and industrial wastewater go into the Wingahocken sewer. But in late August, early September of 2011, we had 4 really large storms. One from a hurricane that was 5 inches, and then on September the 8th, we had a 3.85 inch. So clearly, rainfall contributed significantly to the flooding problem. Secondly, we have to think about upstream impervious cover. When I showed you that 1843 map, clearly this was an undeveloped area, East Mt Airy and East Germantown. Over time, houses, parking lots, streets were added, which included impervious cover, which means that any rainfall that falls onto those will generally find its way to a stormwater inlet and into the Wingahocken sewer. So much of East Mt Airy is impervious cover, and also East Germantown, and the combination of very high rainfall and high impervious cover resulted in floodwaters in the East Germantown area. Now, we say floodwaters because the Wingahocken sewer simply had insufficient hydraulic capacity to handle the flows that came down the Wingahocken sewer on September 8th. So let's spend a minute talking about flooding and sort of compare natural river flooding with combined sewer flooding. First, here's a August 28th, 2011 photo of the Schuylkill River and Kelly Drive, and you can see the obvious flood conditions. A flood simply is a condition where the upstream flow is greater than the downstream capacity. So the water backs up and we in fact have a flood. Now our natural streams and rivers like the Schuylkill and the Wissahickon have a floodplain which absorbs much of the floodwaters during extreme flow events. Normally we don't see a lot of housing and businesses along the floodplain. Kelly Drive is a perfect example. We have a road, and obviously it's inconvenient when the road is flooded out, but that's a lot better than having houses flooded out. So there's an advantage with a floodplain for those extreme high flow events. Now a combined sewer is a different situation. We have the same stormwater going through a combined sewer. The trouble is that it is a fixed capacity, rigid pipe, and that when the flow exceeds the capacity of the pipe, it backs up, overflows manholes, backs up into plumbing systems and houses and businesses and so forth, inundates streets and sidewalks, and floods adjacent houses and businesses. The dilemma is that we often will see houses and businesses built close to a combined sewer. Essentially, you might think of them as actually being built in the potential floodplain for that combined sewer. The final part of it is the local topography at Belfield and East Haines. If you look and walk through that area, you'll see that it in fact is that intersection is in fact the bottom of a bowl, and that there's no way for the water to escape that bowl except through the Wingahocken sewer. So once the flows built up from the rainfall and the impervious cover coming down from East Mt Airy and East Germantown, it exceeded the capacity of the pipe, flows backed up, resulted in a buildup of flow and the tragedy of both people's floodings as well as the unfortunate death of the 27-year-old woman. Now, this is a very serious problem for East Germantown, but also for East Mt Airy neighbors, because we contribute stormwater to the Wingahocken sewer, and we need to think about what we can do as upstream neighbors to help our downstream neighbors. The first thing we can try to do is reduce the upstream flow, stormwater flow that we send to the East Germantown area. Now, Philadelphia Water Department has a incredibly innovative Green Cities Clean Water program, which promotes green stormwater projects such as rain gardens and stormwater bump outs and other methods to retain the stormwater locally, to let it absorb back into the ground as opposed to being run off and going right down, in this case, to the Wingahocken sewer and then possibly overflowing in East Germantown. So one of the things we want to look at and you want to consider as an East Mt Airy resident is these green stormwater projects. Second, we could look at adjusting the local topography and drainage in East Germantown to see if there are things that can be done to eliminate that bowl effect that I described to you, to see if we can help to prevent future dangerous flooding like on September 8th. Obviously, that's going to be expensive, more expensive than the reduction of stormwater, but not nearly as expensive as the final alternative, which is to add capacity to the Wingahocken sewer. The fact that the Wingahocken sewer is right in the city streets, right next to properties and businesses, would make any increase in capacity extremely expensive and difficult, and long time period as well. So, as an East Mt Airy resident, what can you do to help our downstream East Germantown neighbors? The first and most important is to understand that East Mt Airy runoff affects East Germantown. What we do in East Mt Airy flows down to East Germantown. If we can reduce the impervious cover in East Mt Airy, we can help, maybe only a little bit, but we can definitely help our East Germantown neighbors. So rain barrels, rain gardens, redirecting runoff from our roofs, depaving, which is actually removing impervious pavement from our parking lots and driveways, can definitely help East Germantown by reducing stormwater runoff. We can review proposed land use changes to make sure that we minimize or prevent any adverse stormwater impacts. New parking lots, new housing can be installed and with minimal additional stormwater if green stormwater project activities are undertaken. We can encourage the East Mt Airy bid, East Mt Airy neighbors, Mt Airy USA, to initiate or expand on stormwater reduction programs in East Mt Airy to minimize stormwater flows going down the Wingahocken sewer. We can join the Tacony-Frankfurt Watershed Partnership to promote wise water resource practices in both East Mt Airy and throughout the entire TTF watershed. And finally, we can actively participate in the Water Department's Green City Clean Waters program for the benefit both locally of beautifying our neighborhood and minimizing adverse stormwater runoff downstream. Thank you.